We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Blake Ellefson,
Here.
Richard Pufall is excused, Bradley Ray, Brad Ray. Okay, and then Ron Sitzendorf. Stender, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to 2, approval of the agenda.
Ron will make a motion. We approve the agenda.
Blake will second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll go to 3, public comments. Anyone here for public comment? Anyone online or on the phone for public comment? Anyone for public comment online in the room or the phone? Anyone online or the phone or in the room for public comment? Hearing none, we will move to number 4, discussion and action items. 4A, approval of Finance and Economic Development Committee meetings minutes from May 14th, 2025. I've got 2 corrections or questions. One is under 4E for the sheriff's HVAC. In the first line, there's the word buried, and I don't understand what that word means. We could just take that word out and
I believe she meant varied instead of buried. Or brief.
brief. Does brief work for the rest of it?
Brief should work.
Okay, we could change that to brief, and then under 4F for the vehicle lease for the county forestry, in the first sentence, the very last word, instead of packed, it should be packet. So I would propose those 2 corrections. Do we have a motion to approve with those corrections?
Ron Stender will make a motion. We approve both corrections.
Blake will second those.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, going to 4B, financial consultants update with Steve and Mike.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? This is Steve. Mike isn't going to be here this month. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, in talking with Dan and from attending the prior meeting, we wanted to just update you because we know there's a couple projects that you're looking at possibly accomplishing. One being, at the jail, and I forget what was the other one, Dan. It's on your agenda here, but we did get a sneak peek of your audit report for 2024 via Kerber Rose giving a draft to the administration. We did look at it. We did identify some funds that could be potentially available, and in discussions with Dan and Sue, or at least Dan, I think Sue wasn't there on Friday. He had suggested that maybe we present this to you today so that you can be aware of this, so that if you decide to take on a couple of these projects, you know what's available for you to potentially use from your own funds, or just so you know what's there. So what Dan has up on the screen here is a snapshot of what's going to be in your audit report that Kerber will present to you. I'm guessing in July. But at the end of 2024, the county ended the year with the following balances. As you can see there from the general fund, there's some non-spendable things. You had some restricted opioid funds, and then committed funds, which are designated by the county as being a fund that you wanted to maintain. Some of these are smaller things that have just been tracked over the years. The contingency fund is one that has been carried forward from year to year, and there is 840,000 in that fund that we would say is available if the county wished to use some or part of that to help with some of these projects. The unassigned amount down toward the bottom there of the general fund, 2.5 million. I believe last year, this number was 139,000. So the biggest impact on that was with the Sanborn properties and the settlement that Dan and other officials there were able to negotiate with the state, brought in, I think, about $1.8 million to the county that helped write off those unpaid taxes, which resulted in your unassigned balance going from that small amount up to this, along with a couple other things that occurred with your operation in 2024. But certainly about 1.8 million was due directly to that. So just want to point that out to you. The Ashland County, I think this is where your best financial position you've been in since we've been working with you. So very nice to see. And the fact that that number very much correlates to that non-spendable number up on the top there, I think is good. Part of that non-spendable at the top, the 2,696,000, is due to your deficit in your health plan, which I think 1.8 million was listed as the deficit in that fund, which we think is actually a little high, but Kerber went with that because you do have some cash in that fund that could be used to offset that. I think it's going to be more in the 1 million range, of what your deficit is. We are tracking. I did work with Heather to look at your runout claims for this year, because of course you went fully funded with the state plan, but you still have your legacy health plan to run claims out. The good news there is the activity that she had through May shows that there was a liability established at the end of 24 for outstanding claims. We're currently under that amount by about $97,000 at the end of May. So that's a good thing because the majority of your claims probably have already come in. So I think the good news there is I think we have a half a chance of, staying within what the estimates were for the liability for your runout, so that we don't add to that deficit. Does that make sense? So then let me stop there and just pause because I've covered a lot of ground before I have Dan scroll down a little bit. Are there any questions on anything I've covered there so far?
Looks like none here.
Okay, Dan, if you want to scroll down just a little bit on that sheet. Okay, right there. So then you have some special revenue funds that are tracked. Your County Roads and Bridges Fund, which is your highway, the work the highway does on the county roads. Health and Human Services. There's the American Rescue Plan, LATCF, which is available funds to the county that were given in addition to the ARPA funds you've probably heard us talk about in the past. And there's $1,102,801 sitting there. That is something that we think is available for any general government purpose. And when you read the regs on the LATCF, it's basically available for any governmental purpose. So I think it could be very well available for your projects. In addition to that, because I think the HVAC is primarily with the jail, you have your inmate wellness account and your jail assessment account. So you do have some funds there that if you chose to, it would be appropriate. They need to be for jail related type expenses for you to be able to use those, but they certainly are available if you chose to use some or part of them. And then it just goes through the remainder of the other special revenue funds. Your debt service fund has a little bit of money in it left over from 2024. Everything else looks very, very normal. So I just wanted to point out to you that those numbers in the far right, the 800 and some thousand in contingency, the 1,000,001 in LATCF, and the other two inmate wellness and jail assessments, the last two could be available if it was used for something in the jail. The other two are available for any governmental purpose. So just wanted to bring that to your attention because we could see you were on the verge of possibly, taking on a project that wasn't budgeted within 2025. So any questions on that?
So Steve, that means there's basically $2 million available to do a project if we wanted to not take out debt.
Correct. Yeah, I would say it'd be available, like you said, for a project. You wouldn't want to commit something that you are going to need funds year over year or operating, you know, but a one-time thing, yes, I think that would be doable.
And so the committee knows I have been lobbying Senator Baldwin to continue the LACTF funding. That was essentially a pilot payment for the Chequamegon Forest. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I keep asking him every time I talk to him.
Yeah, the current amount you received is tied to the American Rescue Plan or ARPA funds. So that isn't continuing unless, like Dan had said, somebody at the federal level intervenes and makes it, you know, sustaining. But yes, you are correct. There's approximately 2 million sitting there that if you chose to, you could use for a one-time project or projects.
Any questions for Steve? Looks like no questions, so thank you
Okay.
for that, Steve.
Yeah, and I think that's primarily or the extent of what we wanted to update you on today. There wasn't a lot of activity, you know, from the March report we gave you last month through April. I think in talking with Dan, we'll probably do, you know, like quarterly reports on the finances if that's okay with the committee.
I think that should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll stand by here for a little
Okay.
bit.
Blake, could you turn a light on in your room so we can see your face?
Yeah, let me shut my shades.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll go to 4C, Finance Supervisor Job Description.
All right, so this job was approved by exec committee at their last meeting. But Chairman Kinney wanted the finance committee to look at this and talk about it. So
a couple basic questions to start with. One of which is, this is not to my understanding, a finance director, someone stepping in where they have all of this background, skills, and experience to hit the ground running and do all of this.
correct. We purposely are not hiring a finance director because that job position, if you look around the state for municipalities of around the size of Ashland County, you're looking at a minimum of 120,000 a year plus benefits.
So if a person asks, if I take this job, what opportunity is there to advance?
The goal would be to have the person learn our systems and our departments and eventually advance, when exec committee decides, eventually advance to finance director.
So reading through this, it's a rather long list. And one of the questions is, how realistic is it for someone to do all of this? And how does it impact current staff or positions that we have in our current staff and structure to do this?
Well, it is a rather long list. But, you know, a lot of it is stuff that Mike and Steve are doing. And a lot of it is stuff that we really need from somebody to oversee all the other departments, like Mike and Steve have. You know, we've had issues where, you know, where things haven't been timely. This is a person that could help Highway or HHS with their getting up to date, finding the reports or with the information that this committee would like to see. And it's a position, I don't know, Steve, you want to step in?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to jump in, Dan. So if you recall, if you were, I believe, Pat, you were on the board when the report was initially given back in 2021 or 22. It was recommended to hire a finance director position. Of course, at that time, the county was not in a position to be able to afford to even consider adding that to the budget. I think now you're in a little bit different financial situation. And you also have a couple other things occurring simultaneously. The current person who does most of the accounting functions for the county, is eligible to retire at any time of their choosing. Mike and I are not, we're retired guys, and we're not planning to do this forever either. So we had talked to Dan earlier in the year about the possibility of, trying to add a position in the financial area. And like Dan said, it would be very hard, I think, to recruit somebody for a finance director position. But I think it would be doable to hire somebody that can do most of what's in this job description. Obviously, you're probably not going to get somebody experienced from another county, or another municipality, maybe even. But with, your current staff person, Sue, and Mike and myself, I think we can make you one, and develop one for you, which is happening quite a bit around the state. I'm doing this with another town in the southeastern part of the state where they hired somebody, and we're training her to be the accounting treasurer type person for that entity. And it's going very well. The good thing is, the accounting skills that somebody would get with an accounting degree do transfer to a governmental job. It's just that there are unique things that you only see in government that if you haven't been in government, you're not going to understand it. And that knowledge needs to get transferred so that, all of the kind of ground we've covered so far to get you to where you are, that you don't slip back, should, your current person decide to retire, or, and I would just add too, although we help you as a contracted finance person, there's only so much we can do too from afar. Like Dan mentioned, there are things that we'll see, and if we were there, we'd go to the office and meet with the person and say, hey, we need to get this going. Okay, what are your challenges? How can we take those and make them, into opportunities, and get you the resources or whatever you need to get things caught up? That sort of stuff is not occurring today, and that sort of stuff is what we think needs to occur in the future to keep you guys going. It would be a huge resource for the board, for, the department heads and all the other county workers to have a person that could, do what's in this job description.
Questions from the committee? Ron?
Pretty much answered my questions. I guess they're still gonna be on board, so.
For a while.
Yeah,
Till we-
yeah, they're gonna be part of the whole hiring process, as is Sue, and Kenny, if you want to be part of it too. And then, yeah, they're gonna help train. And Sue's gonna help transfer her 40 years of knowledge. And she'll have about 5 years to do it because that's when she's retiring.
Blake, do you have questions?
No, I mean, I think this conversation isn't new, and I think we all have been hoping we could string along Steve for a couple more years and maybe keep Susie around. But realistically, I think, Dan, we want this person to train under them, and so our goal here should be to try to get this posted and try to get some applicants here in the next 90 days, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what we're looking for from this committee. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think that would be nice, because if we can find the right person, we're not just going to propose to hire somebody to fill a position. We want somebody, this is my opinion, who's energetic to learn and has, the basic education behind them. And maybe we'll find somebody who has some government experience to go along with that, but they need the energy and they need the willingness to learn and put the effort in to understand it and carry it forward.
So looking forward down the road, at some point, when you and Mike have retired and gone, you at least gone fishing on a permanent basis, and Sue has at some point decided to retire, do you foresee the county needing to hire another staff person to fill the gap left with you and Mike and Sue at some point no longer being with us? Or would this person then be capable, if all works out, of filling that entire gap?
You know, my intuition tells me I think we'd probably be okay at that point. But I don't know what's coming at us over the next couple of years either. But I think in today's landscape with what is there, I would be hopeful that, we could, obviously, there are a couple people in the clerk's office that add things here too from a payroll standpoint and AP. They're needed as part of this yet. So no changes there. And maybe we can get by with what we have, but we can monitor that and make that decision down the road. That would hopefully be our goal, but I can't promise that today, but that would be our goal.
And then one more question. So we want to be able to take enough time to find a strong candidate, which might not happen right away. We don't know. But once we find that candidate, how long with overlap with you and Mike and Sue would be a good amount of time to have a smooth transition?
Yeah, I think probably 2 years would be a good thing. I mean, if the person's coming in and they have an accounting degree, they have a good foundation there. Some of the things that you do in this type of a job happen once a year, so to go through it once and maybe twice would be great. I mean, I'll just share with you from my perspective, I plan to be around for a couple of years yet. I can't speak for Mike. He's about 10 years older than me. So, he says, hey, I'm gonna hang it up here soon. And then he sends me something and says, hey, look at this opportunity. So I don't know. I can't speak for him, but I'm guessing he's got less than I do. And it would be up to Sue as far as what she wanted to do. This isn't, I mean, I'll just share this. This is not like we're hiring this position and Sue has to retire. It's at her choosing. But like I said, she's eligible and she could at any time decide that that's what she wants to do, and that's her decision. So, this would hopefully allow us a year or two of overlap with her and with us. That would get you to a really good spot.
So
At least 2.
on the job description, then, other than changing Washira County to Ashland County, is there anything else that we would change in this job description before posting?
We could certainly take a look at it. I know we looked at it. Dan, Mike, and I and Sue looked at it. I think it pretty much works. Coincidentally, they had Springbrook, you had Springbrook, so it's written in there that way. I being kind of wired this way, I might change that to be, your ERP system so that it's not labeled as Springbrook or Tyler or whatever it is. And then it survives if there's a change down the road. But I think it's pretty good to go. Dan or Sue, do you guys have any comments on that? I know you've looked at it too, but I think it's pretty close.
I think that Heather has some questions. We'd kind of like to go through it one more time before it gets posted to make
Okay.
sure.
Sure.
We've reviewed it and looked at it, but I think we have a few questions that we'd kind of like to go over. So before that goes out, we'll take care of that. Right.
Well, and we have to figure out where we're going to put the person. That's the big struggle that's going through my head. It's like, where is actually their physical space? Yeah, so that's something I have to talk to with Heather and Sue and Karen about.
So do you want a motion to approve this with the ability for you and staff to make changes that you see fit?
Yeah, slight tweaks and
Okay.
changing the county name, obviously.
So we're looking for a motion to approve this and allowing the administrator and staff and Mike and Steve to make changes that they feel are appropriate. Ron?
Do we have a cost on this?
We're looking at 70 to 90,000.
Okay.
Plus,
Eh.
plus benefits, or is that,
Plus benefits, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would, once we make our changes, I'll forward it off to the entire committee too, just so you can see it.
But you would then post it after sending it out and,
I would give the committee a couple days before posting it, just so in case you say, well, no, hold on, Matt, let's just change this little part. That's all. Give you that final opportunity.
in case you missed for sure on another one.
Exactly.
All right, do we have a motion to allow the administrator and staff and Mike and Steve to modify this as they see fit and run it back, send it out, and then post it?
I'll make a motion that we allow the administrator to go forward with this.
Do we have a second?
Blake will second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we will go to
Matt's mechanic position.
4D, the mechanic position. There's two files there.
Yeah. I just want to go on record saying that I'm supporting this position. That I think Matt made a very good argument, and I think this committee should support it too.
Do either of you want to go through this?
Matt wrote it all up, so I'd let him take it.
Yes, I'm just open to questions, or do you want a brief overview, or what would you like?
Well, I want to ask the administrator first. On vehicle maintenance for the county, are now leasing some vehicles because the belief was that would be more cost effective than buying it. And part of with the lease, when we discussed the sheriff's vehicles,
Mhm.
was we get to a point where we get a new vehicle
Mhm.
through leasing and we have less maintenance. And so on the maintenance
Yeah.
related to this, do you want to talk about that and then the impact
Well,
on this?
Yeah, so the sheriff's department had been doing general maintenance with the highway department. Sheriff Zupke has since decided he's going to just do maintenance locally, because of time constraints. It's just, two deputies have to go down the highway with the cars, so they're wasting a bunch of time that way. Two, he can get it done just for the same price or less locally, and it's quicker. So the sheriff's department will be doing that. That doesn't to say if they don't have like a major repair.
Yeah, that was my understanding. That was for oil changes.
Yeah,
would
major
still-
repairs, they might still do it highway because one, Mac can get big pieces cheaper on the
Mhm.
state contracts
And tires,
and
especially.
tires and stuff on the state contracts. So, they can arrange it so that when they're doing a patrol down there, they can drop the vehicle off, and they can make that one work time-wise without wasting everybody's a ton of hours. But to do generally, they're just going to do it locally. And so, and then, that does put some money into our local economy too.
So what about the HHS vehicles?
From what I understand, and Matt, maybe you can fill us in more, is that Highway Department owns the vehicles. They were purchased with debt levy when Clark was administrator. Not highway money, but debt money.
Mhm.
So they charge HHS 45 cents a mile for the vehicles. That includes all the maintenance on it.
And gas, insurance. I mean, it's our vehicle. We cover all costs. They just pay us the mileage.
Except for gas.
No, we pay gas. We have a
Okay.
gas card in the vehicle.
Okay. So, and then any extra monies that are left over after, say they put 50,000, I don't know, 45 cents times 10,000, so that's $4,500. Say they only, it only cost them $4,000 that year. The $500 then would go to the next year's,
Mhm.
to cover expenses. With the idea eventually that any excess would go towards a new vehicle.
We were building a little money, and then we had some a deer accidents and such that
Yeah.
kind of knocked it back down.
Right. So, so if the sheriff's department hits deer, I mean, they're going to take the vehicle to highway because it's more convenient and Matt can get better pricing. I mean,
Well, I mean, we probably wouldn't do body work, but any mechanical work, yes, for sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, and I guess one of your guys comes up to HHS to do oil changes.
We grabbed the vehicle. I mean,
Yeah.
if it works out especially well in the wintertime, one of the guys will just grab it and head to the
So-
shop. So
So when you have guys up here
Yeah.
already, they're heading back down to highway. They take the vehicle down there.
mhm.
And then when the guys are coming back up, they bring it with them.
Yep.
So they're not really going back and forth just for the vehicle.
Mhm.
They're going back and forth because they're doing highway work in Ashland or on the way to Highbridge. So that's kind of how that one works. You know, would it save time and money to do some of that stuff locally? Maybe. I think that's something Amber and Matt can talk about. But that's kind of basically how it works.
So longer term, when those vehicles are replaced, are we looking at renting vehicles, leasing vehicles, or owning vehicles?
Matt, Matt or Amber, I know you're on. Do you know about how many miles they use a year?
I guess I don't know.
Amber, do you have an idea? 'Cause I
Not off
mean,
the top of, not the top of, oh, excuse me, not off the top of my head, but let me look real quick.
okay, because one of the reasons for leasing the sheriff's department vehicles is that those vehicles get very high mileage. I mean, they're driving them all day, every day. And it certainly makes sense to lease them when you're doing that all the time. Whereas like with land conservation, they don't drive that often. And she'll keep a car for 10 years. So in that sense, it makes sense to own the vehicle. Just like it makes sense to own a snowplow because those things are on the road every single day. And to lease it wouldn't make much sense, although I guess that's what construction companies do with
Yeah.
heavy equipment. But
A few counties have tried it. Washburn County tried it, and they went backwards
Right.
bad. So
so it really depends. In my opinion, it depends on the department and the usage of the vehicle. Like with forestry, it made sense because they beat those trucks up. They're going into the forest with no roads and putting really heavy loads in them. They beat those vehicles to really up. And yeah, we're better off doing at least one with that because, we're going to get more of our money's worth with that. Like the veterans has a vehicle. I mean, he puts 100 miles a week on it. I mean, like one trip to Duluth a week. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to lease it then because there's not much use of it. Dave has a truck. It was the old zoning truck. That hardly gets used, except for when Dave has an errand to run, and so he takes the county vehicle. It would make sense to own that vehicle because of the usage. So when it comes time for HHS vehicles to turn over, I think we need to look at the mileage, how often they're used, and whether or not it makes sense to lease or buy. That, of course, could change anyhow because we know how steel prices are right now. And we don't know what they're going to be tomorrow. So, but Amber, do you have the number?
Yeah, one more second.
Okay.
I just got it pulled up. I was just checking like the revenue that they made here. And I know like Matt was saying that one car was out of commission for a little bit. So that did kind of put a little dent into last year's instead of coming out a little bit ahead, possibly a little bit behind. It looks like
I mean, it would be a conversation upcoming. HHS they asked last year, I think too, but they would like a minivan. When they carry families, their
Right. Yeah. And Terry wants to
need
wait till
low
next year for that.
size on that. So yeah.
So, yeah.
we don't
so-
have to necessarily wait till next year. I think that's just if we need to, we could. I think it depended on our roof and stuff. That's what we were talking about. Like that if it's something that had to get switched to January, but it is budgeted, so we could talk about it. So
Well,
it
it's
looks
budgeted in in highway department, that minivan.
Yeah, when we
Yeah.
bought them before, it was through our budget.
Right, and it went through, it's in it was passed in the budget in last October as part of highway department.
right in the
so-
CIP budget, yep, and the debt levy.
for-
So it looks like we had 12,000 miles, which that's the one that got hit by a deer, so it was a little bit low. 19,000 and almost 20,000 and 14,600 on a third vehicle. So there's quite a bit of miles
So-
that was on in 2024.
So those vehicles, I would say that we should probably better off leasing. Because if you're getting 15 to 20,000 miles on the vehicle, that could be up to 100,000 miles over 5 years.
So part of my reason for asking the question is, I don't think as a county, we've actually developed a policy on whether we own or lease, and then looked at all of the numbers related to this. It's not just direct costs, but also these indirect things of people coming and going and all that sort of stuff. I think we should develop a policy on that and have a better understanding of the options for lease versus own.
Yeah,
I don't think I know we haven't done that. We started leasing and doing what we're doing, and it just, sometimes it feels this is better and sometimes that is better. We did take a hard look at the sheriff's vehicles, but other than that, I think, and then the forestry, I'm really surprised they would lease that one, given what they do with it, but they did.
that's
So,
why you
but-
lease it.
So I think is an item that I think finance should take a harder look at, and maybe this new finance person could help us understand
Mhm.
the numbers behind this. So on the estimated cost for chassis, it's almost 160, and then the body package and outsourced installation, another 201.
Mhm.
What I don't see there is what is the cost for the body package and what is the split between the labor and the body package?
Can you pull up that second one I sent, Dan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Broke that down a little bit
so
better.
it says there's an estimated savings of 73,000, but
That's the 73,000 is what we are paying for labor to the bodybuilder. We asked them what is the labor breakdown of that 201, 382, 73,000 is a labor portion, which that we would save by doing it in-house, or, we'd pay them pay less. If you look at this chart here, I sent this out the other day. Steve had actually asked me to break this down a little bit better, which made a lot of sense. So, the builder cost, and this was a truck from 2 years ago that I did, that we had all the costs in here. So the chassis was 141, 130, the components 138, 517, the labor 73,000 for a total of 352, 647. So if the county was to build that, we're estimating that the chassis will stay the same at that 141, 130. The components, we think would be 124, 665, and the labor would be 30,000. And how we come up with the components, we anticipate, I figured it at 10% of the component cost of 138,517 is about that almost $14,000 in savings by using state purchasing agreements and Sourcewell prices. And, the builders pay similar prices to that, but then they add markup, which I think 10% is actually a low figure. I was just being, trying to keep that reasonable. I think markup is often much more than that. So, I didn't want to try to inflate the numbers to make it look like something it wasn't. I just try to keep the numbers reasonable of where we see the cost and the cost savings. So that 73,000 in labor, it would cost us 30,000 for that particular truck, but that funds comes from equipment usage. We average about $1 million in equipment usage every year. So that money that we bring in from the equipment usage pays fuel, parts, you know, whatever that needs, but it also pays the labor for our mechanics. And then it also funds new equipment purchases. So this position, we do not anticipate asking for any additional county funds. It would be all funded fully through equipment revenue. And it would actually help us with our equipment revenue, as at the current time we're using a operator about 1,500 hours a year, which takes them away from other jobs on the road that they were to normally do, which includes operating equipment, which increases our equipment usage dollars. So
Steve, can you explain that the equipment revenue, how the equipment revenue is generated to the committee?
Sure.
So they can understand what I get a better understanding of what Matt's talking about.
Yeah, so the highway department tracks every piece of equipment, whether it has a motor or not, and it charges every time those assets are deployed into either the state, the county, or a local government, you know, whoever they're going out to work for. The state has rental rates that they establish for those pieces of equipment, and they charge a rental rate for every hour they're out there working. Then at the end of the year, all of the expenses for the truck, so fuel, oil changes, tires, any maintenance on it, get tracked and are compared to its rental rate to see, you know, how the trucks as a whole, or the blades or whatever it is, piece of equipment, how it did, you know, for the year. And that's where, you know, the highway department generates money to be able to replace its equipment, is via those rental rate charges, outweighing the expenses and covering depreciation on the trucks that are, I say trucks, but equipment that the highway department deploys to do work for the whatever customer it is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So what happens on those days where, let's say, it rains for 3 days in a row and it's just plain wet and rainy?
Mhm.
And I understand that doing outside work in different seasons, in different weathers, sometimes is challenging or not possible. I mean, I grew up farming and I know how that is,
Sure.
but you still have staff. So
Yes.
what happens in those stretches where it's just plain too wet, or stretches in the winter where there's too much snow like 3 years ago and you can't brush? What then?
Wintertime, generally, yeah, like you say, if possible, we're out brushing. If not, they're doing truck, you know, taking care of their trucks, cleaning them, cleaning the shops. We take the wintertime, we go through all of our signage, our roadwork signs, repair them. They, you know, they have broken rivets, and oil them, and just go through all of our equipment that we use in the summer that we don't have time to work on at that time. You know, they use them and throw them back in the shop, and then in the wintertime they go through everything that's wore out, broken, whatever. So you know, in the wintertime we are actually able to work a fair amount for our brushing. We have a cutter head for our excavator, so he's inside. We have automatic flaggers, so you don't have somebody standing in the cold. There's actually only usually one guy that has to stand by the chipper to make sure that's operating outside. The rest are all indoors per se. Summertime, you get a range stretch. You know, we're doing mowing. We have a few more tractors we can put out. We have a couple brooms. We're out sweeping intersections. We're you know, doing building cleanup and what have you. But we do keep busy. There's always something ahead to
So,
take care of.
you know, it's a proverbial rainy day job. So from what I've read so far, you know, unless you're missing something and we're missing something as a committee, It'd be really interesting if you could find some counties that tried building their trucks and they stopped, and understanding why, because, sometimes it's just things you don't think of.
Sure.
And so it seems at this point, the building the truck for the county makes sense. One, there's some savings there, but I also believe that not every day is a good day to work outside, and not good for the people, but it's also, there's frankly days where it's not good for the equipment. If it's 20, 25 below, that's hard on equipment too. I mean, if you're getting it out just to run it, because
Yeah.
you feel like, well, I got to get the guys out and doing something, some days those are hard on the equipment too, not just the people.
Sure.
So I think, this is indoor work. You can do it any time of the year, any weather. Those are positives. And from the budget, it looks like from what we know, those are positives. It also means that in terms of keeping everyone busy and doing something productive, it makes that more possible than otherwise. And those are good things. You've got enough room in the shop, the way it sounds, which is good. So it shouldn't impact other things. And then training in a new mechanic, I didn't bring this up in the executive committee meeting, but you brought it up in a document, so I'll refer to that. If you start training someone in and they become more familiar, I think that's a good thing. And then one thing we haven't talked about anywhere is people like to take vacations. Sometimes people can take it when they want or close to when they want. And sometimes it's like, I'm sorry, you can't take a vacation right now because we're too busy. I think inside work enables you to be more flexible when people want to take the vacation. And I think that's a good thing. The question I have in my mind, and this will go to tracking data going forward, is, and I think it would be worth tracking this, because if you add this position now, what it means is when you look at your numbers there, you're saying, okay, we're bringing in this revenue. You've got state and county and a township and some of that. But adding one staff member means you also need to find additional work. And I think that becomes the more challenging part, because you've already got your 11 guys, doing what's on your plate. You now have to find work for one more person. And so, well, I mean, it's another person.
Yeah, I mean, that part, we have the 11 guys, which we're utilizing one of them for 72% of the year in the shop. So we would have to find that work, but I believe it's available already.
But not only find the work, but throughout the year, and the plow truck gives you capacity to work on it when times are slower or whatever. I mean, it may not get built in 3 or 4 months. It might be 6 or 8 months, just because
it could,
if you've got some outside work you can do, go do that. When we're slower or whatever, we're going to work on the truck. So it gives you more flexibility there. But it also means you got to pull in more outside work. And I think it would be good to track carefully the outside work. What jobs do you bid on to take on? Which jobs are you getting and not getting, and always making sure that the county comes out ahead on that. And then tracking, when you're doing inside work, how much of that is, we just need to have people inside working on equipment because there's repairs or things that need to be done, versus the weather's just plain miserable. So it's a good day to have the people inside. So that as we look down the road a few years, it's one thing to say, here's the revenue the county can bring in, but because you always have to pay and provide benefits to the employees, we also have to make sure that we're still coming out ahead with the staff size that you then have.
Sure.
And
one important note, and you mentioned bidding work. We actually do not bid work. We're required to charge actual costs. So we'll give estimates to town or other municipalities. We try our hardest to make them a little bit over what we think it would cost, because we don't want to tell them it'll cost 30,000 and then come up with 35,000. We'd rather tell them it's 30 and it'll cost 28. But we do charge actual cost for everything we do. So there's, and we tell whoever we're working for beforehand that it's not a bid, it's an estimate, and you will pay actual costs. So we actually really can't lose money in that situation.
Well, that's why a good finance person is invaluable, because unlike a private business that thinks they have a great business plan and then they find out they don't, the county is always backing your budget with dollars to, provide benefits and pay and equipment. We need to make sure that things are working out as anticipated. And if they're not, then decide how to adjust.
Sure.
So tracking that really good data is going to be important, because it's one thing to maximize revenue. It's another thing, what we really want to do is maximize, this is an optimization problem really with a lot of variables, and they change year to year with weather and work available, is try to optimize what you end up with after all those expenses are covered. And it's easy to miss expenses. Your capital budget is around 600,000. We have to make sure that if we're using that equipment, that we get the value out of it that we need with the labor and putting that on the debt levy. So it's one more reason to have a really strong finance.
We do not use
program.
debt levy for equipment. We haven't for a few years.
Yeah.
You remember a few years ago, we were doing it. Mike and Steve kind of said, hey, shouldn't do that. And we had to actually pay some of that back. So it is all out of what we bring in now, equipment revenue.
Yeah, and as part of his request for capital request, he's going to have the chems reports for you as soon as they're available. So you could you'll have them by August.
Yes. Yeah, you know that report you've seen last year that you really liked. It's actually it comes through the reporting we do to DOT, and they are not due until August, so they're not complete yet. So Marcy's hoping to complete them by the end of June, early July. So we hope to get that to you soon.
So you got a plow truck on order, correct?
Yes.
Have they started it?
So we received a week ago our 23 truck. Our 24 truck is at the builder. Let me see. No, 24 truck we received a week ago. Our truck for this year, the chassis just landed at the dealer this week. It'll be coming to our shop probably in a week or so. Bob was in touch with the builder recently, and 8 months to a year before they'll get to it.
So my question is, you might have to talk to Dan and the highway committee some, but if you're going to hire a mechanic to in part build plow trucks, how far out are we before that person would actually start? And the related question is, could we cancel out on the current truck and do that in-house?
Yeah, we did. Bob and I did discuss that. We don't want to approach the builder until we have more information, I guess, and if the position is going to happen, and then how we're going to fill it also. That could be an issue too. We haven't tried to hire a mechanic for some years, so.
Well, Dan, if they can cancel out on that, it's an if. The executive committee has to approve the position.
Correct. And that's July 12th, I believe. So whatever that Tuesday is. I see the chairman's looking it up right now.
July 15th, I believe it was exec.
Maybe you're right. Whatever that Tuesday is exec.
So I'm in the executive committee. Last time we talked about this, I was looking for more information. At this point, the questions I have, two questions, one of which is what timing makes sense for this position? And that's in part if you can cancel out the other one. I think this position makes sense when you can put the person to work. If you can cancel the contract, then that's sooner than later. But if you're not going to start building trucks for a year or so, then that's another discussion on timing.
Okay, I have a possible solution. Chairman Mertig, would it be okay if Matt go ahead and started going advertising for the position, but not filling it until exec approves it? Yeah. Yeah, but would it be okay if he advertised and then that way, if he can fill it, but when exec committee approves it, and he has somebody who can fill it, he can probably then cancel the build and start.
You tell me when I can talk to the builder to cancel the build, then we will get on it.
Well, I just, is that okay with you, Mr. King, if he goes and starts
I
advertising?
mean, so I have information now that I didn't have a week or two ago or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I mean, to me, it makes sense. How we get there is another thing, is if that truck hasn't been started and we're gonna hire a position, so the risk is, what if you can't find anybody you want?
Well,
It's a
But,
possibility.
but that's,
this is a situation. I think you get approval to go ahead with this, exec okays it. Matt starts advertising for a position, but until he gets a position, I don't think you cancel a build. Because you might not have a position for who knows when. So the canceling the build shouldn't go until he gets an employee.
Right,
Otherwise, you're gonna be.
right.
screwed.
That's why I was asking if he could start advertising now. And then, but he can't hire until after exec approves it. And if exec says no, well, then he just cancels the advertisement.
Sure. I mean, if we were to start advertising next week, we would have to advertise for 2 or 3 weeks and give them a little time. I mean, we wouldn't be having the applications due before that July 15th date anyway.
so Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but so I've been looking at what you have here, but also I've got the 2023 report from Highway with everything there, and then doing some number crunching and trying to see how this fits in. I think with your current level of staff, if you don't find a mechanic anytime soon, with your current level of staff, you could build this truck. You may not be ready when the snow flies necessarily, depending on how much other work you have lined up. But if you canceled it, started the build with current staff, and could get as far into the winter until
Yeah.
you're done and make it work with your other trucks, which I think
Yeah.
you could.
Yeah, we can.
I think you could get by without that mechanic and still build this truck.
Mhm.
And if it took a while, months to get a mechanic, you would just be looking for less other work beyond the state, the county, and the township work that you already have. You could fill that gap in part because you're not going to be doing as many oil changes. I think you could take this on with your current staff, is my estimate.
I would agree with that. We could make it work somehow. Yeah.
So-
I mean, we could, like you say, on bad weather days, we have other staff that can help out too, that are
And
qualified.
actually, I think it would be interesting to try it to start with that way.
Sure, just let's hope it doesn't snow in October.
Well,
I mean, we're
You
not
got-
getting rid
you
of the
got
old
other
trucks
trucks,
until
and you got backup, so.
we have the new ones in the fleet. So,
Well, I'm just meaning all your guys would be out on the road.
yeah. If it starts snowing in October and doesn't quit until May like it did in 23, then yeah, good luck.
So not an action item for us. It goes back to exec and then the chair and Dan and highway commissioner can figure out details on what agendas look like going forward.
So is it safe to say that committee would support, give tell the exec that they support the hiring of this position?
Ron, do you want to make a motion?
Yes,
Um,
I'd like to make a motion, that we approve hiring a mechanic for the highway department.
I can second that. This is Blake.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Matt, go ahead and post the ad. You can't hire anybody until
Sure.
and if exec committee approves it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Next, we're going to the sheriff HVAC repair.
Dave, you want to start off since you're the guy who knows everything in the county about this? And then,
And Dave, we've gone through this topic before, so I think the three of us that are here today, we've listened to presentations and we know where we're at with the need. I I don't know that we need to go through the gory details unless you know some we've missed in the previous meetings.
No, sir. Just the breakdown of the building real fast. I just put together some notes. Obviously, the jail was built in 1996. Obviously, you guys know that it runs 365. Now, everything except for the actual water heaters has been is in need of repair. The life expectancy of the equipment, it's at or past its life expectancy. We had two proposals, one from Jamar, one from Johnson Control. There's a breakdown of cost and or equipment replacement and suggested equipment from both vendors. John from the Jamar company is here today. He actually wrote the proposal that you guys see in front of you. Some adjustments were made for the investigator's office and for the kitchen HVAC system to include AC. We're currently working in partnership with Jamar. They're currently doing our maintenance, annual maintenance. And I know that when we were talking about local service or workforce, Jamar supplied numbers to us as far as actual employees that they have in county that would be on this project. Yeah. The only difference between the two that I see looking at numbers and looking at the equipment is it would be the boiler, the minute BTUs, right?
A million BTUs per hour.
Yeah.
John, you have to use the microphones. Otherwise, people online can't hear you and the recording won't pick you up.
Yeah, it was a million BTUs per hour. The current one's approximately 1.57 million BTUs an hour. We're gonna put in a 2 million BTU an hour boiler. I personally grew up in Ashland. I worked at paper mill till 1998. Went to work for some contractors and actually have been involved in the maintenance or overseeing the maintenance of the jail since then. So I've never seen the boiler on a capacity shortage. There's always been a redundant boiler, even with the current system. So going with a 2 million BTU boiler is not a bad thing. Even during COVID, when the fresh air requirements came up to way past the normal standard, when they went to 100% fresh air, the boiler still handled the requirements of heating that outside air.
And just to make sure I'm correct on this, with the boilers, you're using one or the other for heating. You can't run those, say, in series or something, or in tandem to run them both at the same time?
You could.
You could.
They'll be, one's a master, one's a slave. Usually when one gets to 50%, you want to ramp the other one up to keep them so they're condensing more. So, but one boiler will carry the load of the jail very easily. So it's 100% redundant.
Well, the reason I asked that is, do we have anyone from Johnson Controls here today? So the reason I asked that was from the other presentation, I got the impression it was one or the other, at least for what they were proposing versus, what you just said. If you needed the other one. So this, in other words, the 2 million, even on a really cold stretch, because you can kick in more than one boiler, you
would.
still can cover the heat
Yeah,
needed.
easily
Yeah, okay,
could cover the heat.
all right.
So, and they're both dual fuel. You currently have propane backup. So both boilers will have propane backup in case something happens to natural gas.
So one question I want to ask you in case I forget. You're going to put a chiller on the roof.
Correct.
So the chiller itself is not a light item. What are you using for a fluid?
Glycol.
Okay, because it's gonna freeze otherwise.
Yep.
So that density is a little less than water, if I'm not mistaken. So you got a lot of weight up there. It's one thing to put supports on the roof to carry the weight of the chiller. And it, mentions supports on the roof here, but what if you need, or do you know if you need vertical supports under the roof to carry the load to transfer that weight of the chiller back down to the ground?
No, it'll just be spanned over
The
length
current
of-
curbs,
of-
yeah.
Yeah,
You're 100% confident of that?
yes. Yep. The current 50-ton condensing unit is approximately 3,000 pounds. The new chiller is like 4,000 pounds.
And,
So
and thousands of pounds were taken off that roof from the old
From the ballast.
ballast.
off of-
Yeah.
So they took off 3 inches of rock off the roof before too, so, but
And if you happen not to be correct about it, I'm assuming at this point in your career, you're not wrong about something like this. But if you happen for whatever reason not to be correct, we wouldn't be getting a change order to
No.
put supports in it, okay? All right. And then would you recommend replacing both boilers or one? We're told one has about 10 years left in it.
both are existing 1996 boilers. I would just replace them both.
And if we only replaced one, coming back is always, not as efficient in terms of doing it, that at the same time, you would recommend both at once.
Yes.
Questions, comments from the committee? Or our board chair? Or our administrator?
John, just about paying for it. Am I not mistaken, you broke this up into two pieces for pay for part now and then part next year?
Well, we had that in the original proposal, and then we re-estimated, and then some of the like you guys were just gonna move ahead with the project. But I did waive the 20-day,
Right, I see August 7th here.
up to 7. Equipment prices are all been.
Yeah, they're changing daily.
Quite risky, actually.
Yeah.
That's our financial commitment to you guys.
Okay,
We've been county courthouse and the jail for years, so.
Ron?
I really think at this point, if we're gonna replace one boiler, we need to replace the other one. If you go to replace another one 5 years down the line, your cost is gonna be a lot higher then than it is now. I've been involved in boiler replacement, 3 15, 1,000 BTU boilers. And, yeah, you're better off doing it now, getting it done.
Because you also then have the controls that you want to have all current and updated too versus older systems.
And
What-
we just changed the assignment last year on the lead and lag or master and slave. Because one of the boilers is experiencing intermittent problems with wiring. So that boiler, which was the slave, is now the master or lead boiler.
Blake?
Well, I mean, when this originally came, it was Jamar, now it's been others, and I think we're back to Jamar. I think the price there is, I think the history, there's a relationship. We gotta do it, even though it costs money, you gotta do it, and like Ron said, don't do it half-assed, you do it now and you pay the money and you have it done right. That's my sense, so I feel like we've talked about this enough, I've seen enough. I'm ready to kind of make a decision here and give the sheriff his ability to move forward on this project.
So this is Pat. I went through these proposals. We also had a third one that's not here right now. But after reading through everything, going through everything, and then working with this in part when I was in the Navy, and having dealt with old equipment there because there wasn't money to replace stuff, I think the county is best off replacing everything and going with the Jamar proposal. That's my feelings, so. Unless there's other questions or comments, are we ready for a motion?
Ron will make a motion. We go forward with the Jamar proposal.
Blake will second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, John.
So John, the county board meets on July 22nd, I believe it is. Well, I can pull it up here easy. Okay, so because of this cost of this purchase, the entire county board has to approve. So this will be on the July 22nd agenda. And then, and in the meantime, we should have a finance committee meeting beforehand to decide how to pay for this, whether you want to use cash or debt levy. So
Yeah, I know which one you prefer. And John, the board knows we need this, so. So you want to wait till a further meeting to decide how to pay for it then?
well, it's not on the agenda, so
Right, so, all right. So then we'll go to 4F, vehicle lease for the sheriff department.
Dave, you're up again.
Dan, you wouldn't have the justification for, that I put in for the capital outlay by chance? Oh, I have one. No problems, I have one. All right, so currently, as it stands, we have 4 regular vehicles, patrol vehicles, and we have 2, I'm so sorry. We have 5 patrol vehicles and 3 admin vehicles and 1 transport vehicle that's currently on the enterprise fleet program. Non-lease vehicles with higher mileage include 4 regular vehicles, patrol vehicles, which have over 100,000 miles. We have currently 2 spare vehicles that are in the fleet. Those vehicles are used for transports and or if one of our regular patrol vehicles are in maintenance. One of the spare vehicles has 145,000, the other one has 180,000. As Dan mentioned earlier in the meeting, these vehicles are not driven like a regular vehicle. They may have some equipment that are more heavier duty than a regular vehicle, but the more miles we put on them, the less return we have for them when we sell them. The current proposal, what was requested as the capital outlay, was to include 4 more patrol vehicles and one admin vehicle. Out of those 5 vehicles, one of the vehicles was going to be purchased and paid for under our treatment assisted diversion deputy, our TAD deputy, our court security deputy. So 4 vehicles would be under the debt levy.
Could you clarify if you're proposing to add 4 more vehicles to to the 5?
No, just 5.
So having 5 that are leased?
It would be five sheriff's office vehicles. One of the 5 would be purchased and paid for by the court security deputies funding.
He's talked about the TAD grant. We could lease that one too out of the TAD money. So, although Adam doesn't, well, he is a sheriff's deputy and does respond to calls. So he does need a reliable vehicle.
Yeah, he, currently right now, the program split, I believe, 80-20 with us. So he spends, not only does he help us out during the week, but usually Fridays he goes and patrols and then he takes overtime shifts.
Could you tell me what we're being asked to consider?
They asked to consider to, replace our higher mileage vehicles and add an additional 5 more vehicles to the fleet.
So he wants at least five more,
If I-
5 more vehicles to replace older vehicles that we currently own, that we didn't replace last time because the mileage wasn't high.
Yes, sir.
And it made sense to keep them since we already owned them, but now their mileage is getting high and they're in need of replacing, and so they want to lease 5 more.
So,
And that would come out of debt levy, because all of our lease payments come out of debt levy. So when he refers to that, that means we're not paying for the full cost of a squad, we're paying for the year lease term.
So
so this would be
is,
where a policy on whether we lease or own would be nice, because a year or two ago, whatever, already on leasing, if I recall correctly, we had some vehicles that were older, but we could still drive and we own it. It made sense to own them. And what wasn't clear then is if we were going to drive those vehicles long enough, or any additional vehicles long enough or enough to justify leasing or owning. But now you're saying they would get enough use to justify the leasing.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir. And then we,
So they get enough use to justify the leasing as we understand it.
yes, sir. Deputies put on nearly 25 to 30,000 miles a year per vehicle. One thing that why I believe we're so far behind is we didn't have that additional added to the fleet or replacement to the fleet for 2025. So 2025 was, like you said, we were on the fence. We had vehicles that had higher mileage, but wasn't to the point of we can still get our money's worth out of them. But now they're 130, 140, almost that time where we're now paying for maintenance costs, which doesn't justify the vehicle's value.
if I can add something, this is Brian Zupke.
Go ahead, Sheriff. And if you could speak up a little more.
Sure. Again, we're requesting 5 vehicles for this next budget year, but we're only technically 4. The TAD Corp program would pay for the 5th one. So we're requesting 4. Yeah, we thought about it last year of adding more because we were so far behind. Originally, my first year, we were 10 squads behind, which you never want to be in that position, but we were. That's why we went with the enterprise fleet, because it saved us with this payment program. I think with offsetting it, not doing it last year and waiting for this year to get the remainder, we might have to get a couple more next year. After the 4th year, a lot of these squad cars will be traded in. And just remember that they sell those for us at an auction. They only charge us $500 per vehicle, so all profit goes back into our account. We'll see our payments go down after that 4th year. When we're offsetting all of these, it may take 8 years, but you'll see a huge reduction in all the monthly payments for enterprise.
So let me backtrack for clarity, see if make sure I'm understanding this. At the moment, you've got 5 patrol cars that are leased.
5 regular patrol cars, 3 admin vehicles, which would be myself.
That are
sheriffs,
leased?
and yep, and then we have 1 jail transport van.
And then for the request on these 5, which really 4 are yours and the other, the TAD for the most part.
Yeah.
Are you adding that to what you currently are leasing, or are you replacing some?
Replacing. replacing and adding, and it's gonna be, we're gonna use one vehicle, I believe, that doesn't have that much many mileage, but the sheriff, we added 2 more deputies, last year, that we didn't have vehicles for. One of them will not have a vehicle, won't have to need it, no need for a vehicle until next year because they're currently in the academy. So we're anticipating that it will fall in around the same time that we're gonna need the vehicle, so.
So we don't have any documentation as a committee to look at on this.
Yeah.
So what are,
The cost is the same as all the other vehicles. It's roughly, I want to say, what is it, $600 a month? Per vehicle?
Well, Dan, I think what Pat and I think what I'm missing is what is the fleet gonna look like after this?
It's,
Because that's what I'm
Okay.
struggling with. I know what they're saying. I just don't have anything in front of me.
I suspect within probably 2 more to 3 more cycles of purchasing, or not purchasing, but leasing vehicles, our fleet will be completely enterprise owned or enterprise ran.
so without numbers and documentation in front of me, it's hard to make sure I'm understanding this, let alone the detail. If you can get that to us for the next finance meeting, is on your end, is there any inconvenience or harm from that delay?
I thought that was submitted. Dave, didn't you submit that with the last year's budget?
hold on a second, Brian, we can't hear you. Let me turn up the volume.
You hear me now?
A little better.
Dave, didn't you submit the cost from last year and then with the addition of the new requested ones for this?
That's in
next
the-
budget?
Yes, sir, that's in the capital outlay plan, or that, and with the
I can run downstairs and put it on the screen if you want.
Is that what you're requesting, Blake and Pat?
Well, I think it would help us because I mean, on paper, it makes sense what you're talking about. And I think Pat, he keeps getting hung up or not hung up, but just wanting more details around the lease versus own and which situations are the best. But for these, leasing makes the most sense. You guys have an outdated fleet. We need to get that into, so what I would like to see is what you're talking about is the documents that show, here's our fleet, here's the ages with the miles, here's the values, here's what we're gonna do on enterprise, so we know we're actually not gonna have 5 more brand new vehicles that we're leasing and keeping these. No, this will be the fleet afterwards. So you probably have all that. I just am not seeing it.
I do have all that, and I apologize, I thought that was submitted, but we can get that for next meeting.
Are we okay with putting this on the next finance agenda? Does that delay cause you any inconvenience or problems?
Well, they order, a couple of these were Ford products where they order in June, which, and then the remaining, there's a couple of Chevys that they
Okay.
order in August.
Put on project
So they're
that.
here by next January.
I have to go downstairs and scan it and then put it on.
Okay. The administrator is going to go down there and scan this so that we can protect it and share it with everybody. So Sheriff, yeah, I think what you just said makes sense in terms of getting to it sooner than later. And from the conversation so far, it's consistent with the conversation we had when we started leasing. Let me, in the interest of time, if we can, until he scans that, go to item 4G, policy for providing funds to outside organizations. Carisha, can you project that for us? Can you do that magic? So the last few years, finance has talked about having just a basic form where we could request some information from outside organizations without making it too onerous. So as you look at this form, at the top, there is a due date, August 1st. The assumption would be we'd use this form each year or tweak it as finance sees fit each year. So just filling in organization, amount requested, and then Blake, you can read this, I take it?
Yes, I can. I've actually brought it up and I forwarded it to a couple people who want money from us, so it's great.
Questions, comments, suggestions?
I have just positive feedback thus far. I've read through it and it's simple enough where it shouldn't cause someone too much grief, and I don't think it's too onerous either. So I think it's what we wanted and it's formal, and so that's exactly what this should be requested, or this should be submitted with every request over every dollar amount, right? That they're looking for money from us.
Right.
So like the county fair, Ashland County Fair, when they come and they want to build a bunny barn and they say, hey, I need more money. And we say, okay, here's your, what is that bunny barn doing for us? This is what we get.
Well, if you invest in a bunny barn, it's going to multiply.
They do change things quickly.
I used to raise rabbits. That got out of hand. So any questions, suggested changes, modification, and we can always change it from one year to the next. Okay, so if we're okay with that, then.
We need a motion.
Yeah, let's do a motion to,
Blake will make a motion to accept this form as how we provide outside organizations a request form for funding.
Ron Stender, second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, let's look at that roof on Health and Human Services. Terry, do you know how old that roof is by chance? I want to say about 20 years.
We moved into this building in 2006, and so I believe it was probably new at that time.
Yeah, 20 years.
So
About.
I did some roofing in my younger days. As I'm looking at this one, I don't see curl on the shingle from like excessive heat. The shingles themselves, while they show some age, they still look in pretty good repair. And what happens sometimes is wind gets underneath these. The bottom of each shingle, there's a tar tab there that should attach to the next one and seal it. So from catching wind, that doesn't always work out as hoped, especially if this was shingled in cooler weather. It clearly needs to be taken care of. And so from what I'm seeing in the pictures, places like that, what you do is you slide the shingles back up in place if the shingles are still sound. Otherwise, you get the closest looking replacement you can find. And you nail the shingles back in place, not in the original hole, but not too far off either. And then with a tube of blackjack, tar over the nails, and then use that blackjack to seal from one shingle to the next. So it's a fairly common repair that occurs in roofs, but it clearly needs to be taken care of. I don't think we need a new roof yet. That one to me looks like it's got 5 or 10 years if these problems are addressed. 10 might be pushing it, but 5 anyway. I mean, that shouldn't happen, but it obviously did.
Yeah, everything around it seems good. It's just those spots where you need to repair it, put it back to.
Yeah,
what it was.
unless someone got up there and looked, we're seeing some pictures. If a contractor got up there and looked and said, there's way more than that than you guys saw in those pictures, right there, you can see that's loose because it doesn't follow the lines. They did a pretty good job of, keeping the line straight, which is nice because then you can eyeball that and see where it's not straight. That's where it's loose.
Dave, the maintenance man, did get up there and look at it, and he said he used to do roofing. His assessment, but just his assessment, was we need a new roof.
The new roof is in your future. The question is how soon?
That's the So the maintenance man is one guy, which obviously Pat is one guy. I think we're all gonna have varying degrees of expertise and willingness to want to spend on this. My sense is we need to have a roofing expert go up there and tell us, okay, here's, how much it would cost for me to patch this, and here's how long I could make this last. If they say that they can't and that we need a new roof, then that's what we hear, but I think we should ask a roofing expert if there is one.
I concur with Blake.
Because even if we said, look, we need to do this, we're not going to get anybody real soon in all likelihood. So we probably have to repair this anyway. Terry, how much is there beyond what we're seeing in these pictures? Is there more than what we're seeing in the pictures, or the pictures capture everything?
I think he only went up on one side of the roof and he said it's not visible from the ground. So when he crawled up there, that's when he said, oh yeah, it's really bad. And the reason this came to our attention was it was basically raining in one of the offices. So he located that spot, but he said there's probably several, and it's probably trickling down the rafters and then coming down the wall. But that's really all I know.
So with his job description, is this something that would be in his purview on his actual job description or not?
That would be a Dan question.
Dave Dyer, no, he can't do this.
So when you say can't, you mean?
This is not what he does.
Okay, so Terry mentioned he's done some roofing in the past. If he was interested in doing it as a contractor that the county hired, could we consider that a separate contract?
I guess we could ask him, but I don't think he'd want to. I mean, he just had a baby and his wife would not be very happy with him. I mean, I would want to get a licensed contractor to do this. Otherwise, I know somebody who can just who can do it. He's going to do my roof.
Why don't we get a contractor to take a look, give us a price?
Yeah.
Do we put Terry in charge of that, or who does that? Dan?
I can have Dave do that.
Thank you. I would appreciate that very much.
I think this is a priority that needs to be looked at, especially we've been fairly lucky how dry it's been, but it's going to be raining, and the last thing we want to do is have depreciation accelerated because of us not maintaining or trying to fix this. So I would prioritize, Dan, getting someone there as soon as possible that is a licensed bonded contractor to give us a quote and tell us what we have to do here.
You want to make that a motion, Blake?
Yes, I would love to. Let's make a motion here to send a licensed contractor to look at the roof at Health and Human Services and give us an idea of what the remediation is going to involve.
You also mentioned bonded a moment ago. Do you want him bonded too?
Well, for the county work, yes, they should be licensed and bonded for our work.
Is there a second?
Ron Stender will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Terry?
Yes.
Terry?
Yep.
Somebody, Carisha knows somebody who might be able to come even look at it even tonight. So if you see somebody strange walking around your roof.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, it clearly needs to be either repaired properly or at least covered with something to keep that water out ASAP. Right.
Cheapskate, and my wife, she wouldn't let me go and I couldn't. So we have to fix that. Yep.
Okay, so let's go back to the sheriff lease question, Dan.
Dave, which document do you want me to? Where is it?
So, I mean, I can talk on the lease thing. I've been the one dealing with
Right
it,
there,
so.
Davey. This is Sheriff CIP.
Is that the CIP you want first? He doesn't, he
The
does
one
a
that's-
couple of them.
Enterprise Fleet Management, I think that's what they want to see. It's a page from Enterprise.
This one?
The Excel sheet that's attached to that. Is that an email currently?
Um, no, there's no email, no spreadsheet attached. Oh, Brian just sent one now.
That was in the CIP request, they said.
Brian, is it 2025 squad car assignments?
No, it's the one Dave sent you right before that. There should be
No, I
one
didn't
on
get,
there
there was no spreadsheet on that one.
for Excel. I mean,
I'll put it on the CIP for now. All right, let me look and make sure before I go.
if you can find the one with Enterprise, yeah, it's on there under Sheriff Fleet. You'd scroll all the way to the left and go all the way to the top.
Okay, I just got it from here. It says Ashland County, Wisconsin Sheriff Budget. All right, I have to go downstairs and move that to the Everyone Drive. But Dave, I put your CIP on here, and if you want to go over that with them. Because you have some of the information.
Okay, so, currently, our current years. All right, so currently you're looking for this year, our current lease cost was 126.96. And then for next year's budget, including those five, in addition to those 5 vehicles, you're looking at 159,500. If you scroll farther down, keep on going down. And there should be one more attachment to that, and it's not there. Those vehicles, the Excel sheet that Dan's printed off will show the current mileage and all of our fleet. Currently, we have 8 vehicles over 100,000, and then one of the vehicles is at 180. We're using currently as a spare, and it's not a full-time vehicle right now. And the reason why we had to add a couple more vehicles than anticipated was again the additional members in our agency that wasn't accounted for as far as vehicle wise.
As long as we're talking about squad cars
Yeah.
with Mellon and what happened there, does that car possibly fit into this picture anywhere?
Yeah, so currently, we have those 2 spares. It would become a spare and or we give it to our newest deputy, because right now, how the sheriff's office is sitting right now, there's still one position to be filled. And again, it'd most likely be our newest deputy who doesn't graduate the academy until August or October. And then with field training, he won't see a vehicle until January.
So that car is being
Yeah.
part of your planning then?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And the only thing we'd have to do is remove a couple letters at the bottom.
Oh.
Blake, can you see that? So,
For some reason, I'm still seeing the roof.
oh, okay. Um, how about now?
Okay,
Says
Yeah.
enterprise fleet
got it,
management.
got it.
Right. Okay. I have to. Let's see if I can make this bigger. Oh. All right.
Well, would it didn't like that, Dan, as far as the,
I tried to make it bigger so everybody could see it easier. There we go.
it's not the same. Oh, can you scroll all the way up? There we go. All right, so as you can see, the last known odometer mileage will be on the, towards the right of the screen. And you can see, I think 8 or 9 vehicles is over 100,000 miles. Currently, right now, we have that 5 patrol vehicles and 3 admin vehicles will be listed on the lower mileage ones that we currently have. And so what Enterprise does is that once they sell the vehicle, like the sheriff says, they only charge us $500 to do the sale. We've been seeing bigger profits with Enterprise and selling the vehicles because they can reach a bigger crowd. And so they take the sales of that vehicle and then they figure it into the cost. So as you can, Dan, at the very bottom of that screen, there should be sheriff resale review. And these are, as that's your second page. Click on that. These are low numbers that they're figuring in when they're selling the vehicles, how much they think that we can get for the vehicles. Because we're running into spares and having to have spares, we, if you scroll to the right a little bit more, it should be a cost analysis breakdown. They take the sale price of that vehicle on what they're thinking, and then which lowers the ultimate lease of the vehicle cost. So they just put it into that total cost, which lowers it. And Blake, on the question about I think it was there's a monthly payment question, and it all depends on the vehicle. The admin vehicles obviously are lower cost because there's less equipment involved with the vehicle. And the vehicle doesn't have to be a pursuit rated vehicle.
Thank you.
So what you're asking us then is to be able to enter into a lease agreement for 5 vehicles, 4 which are yours and 1 that's a little bit yours. For the one that's for the grant part, do you oversee the vehicle purchase for that? I assume that's why it's on your list?
For Adam's one.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, Adam is a deputy sheriff.
okay.
He's just assigned as our treatment and diversion officer. He also does court security.
So you're looking for a motion to be able to enter into a lease for 5 vehicles and then also to sell, tell me how many vehicles?
Currently 2, there's possibly 3 that we're thinking to give back. Basically, Enterprise sells them to us or sells them for us. Yeah.
What about these older vehicles that we own?
That's where we're in the battle of, do we keep them a year and use them as spare, or do we get rid of them? And hopefully they don't go, that we get as much as we can out of them.
Used vehicle prices are pretty high right now.
You're right.
They're going to get higher.
And then they're probably going to get higher. So I guess as you watch the market, if you have an inkling that you want to sell something, let us know.
Yes, sir.
Don't be afraid to come back before next year and say, we got a couple that, looking at the market, we think we might want to sell.
Okay.
Okay. We ready for a motion? Ron?
I'll make a motion, the sheriff's department to, do the vehicle lease.
So leasing of 5 vehicles and then,
Five.
but also selling 2 or 3 as they determine?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Dan, while you were out and about, we had looked at the application for county funding form. The committee approved using the form as is for this coming year.
Okay,
And then you were here, I believe, when we looked at the HHS roof and approved
yeah,
finding a licensed bonded contractor, or the best we can do at least, and getting that sealed up. And then going from there in terms of determining, I mean, you still have to look at when that roof is due to be replaced. So I assume you and HHS would
mhm,
look further into it, but at the very least, getting that thing covered up and sealed. Yeah.
all right, and we'll hopefully find a contractor to give you a price on fixing, on just roofing it.
So that, I believe, gets us to 5, which is a closed session.
Yeah, before we go into closed session, I would ask if Carisha could stay. Okay, can everybody else who's not a county board member please sign off?
So Mr. Boussaint, he could say for this.
Mr. Buseka and Chairman Mertig's on here too.
Okay. So we need a roll call vote to go into closed session. Carisha, can we do a roll call with those present?
Pat Kinney,
Yes.
Blake Ellefson,
Here,
We
Yes
need
or no?
a yes or no to go into closed session.
yes.
Ron Spindor.
Yes.
Sorry.
So we have voted to go into closed session. Have we,
No.
We still have 3 people, now 2 people that are unknown callers. Maybe one's Gary Merteg.
Gary is the 661. It's a
Hey, Dan.
209-1962. Who's that?
Hey,
Hey.
Dan.
Yes, sir.
Hey, in all honesty, we shouldn't be on the phone either. I think somewhere in the past, the county board voted that in closed session, county board members included should not be on closed session because we're never sure and this occurred when we were having people call in from motels and other places when
Okay.
they were on vacation. But I'm almost sure that we're not supposed to be on because you don't know who else is with us.
I could tell you that's WCA's position. However, there's no statute that addresses that, but obviously.
Okay, it's certainly up to the committee because, if they said they didn't want us on, that would be fine. If they don't mind, then that's fine too.
I
Okay.
can validate that I'm in my office with a closed door and there's no other people here, if that helps. I don't know if that matters.
so,
Yeah, I wasn't so concerned about the committee members. It was more like myself or something, just in case the committee had an issue with that.
Chairman, I think the way that was left, I know it's come up multiple times, that if I'm correct, and I might not be, is that it would be left to each committee to determine how they would handle that. And in this case, we've been asked to have a staff member here by the administrator. And then as long as the 3 of us on the committee are okay with having other board members here, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, George, are you alone?
Yeah, so it's pretty clear in the supervisor handbook that no elected official can be excluded from any meeting. So I think as long as a supervisor attests that they are in a closed room by themselves with no other recordings, that it's up to their responsibility to test that they are maintaining the privacy. Not really much different than a member of the committee sitting in the boardroom agreeing that they're not going to go and talk about it outside the boardroom afterward.
Well, the issue is with, technology, if there's others that can hear or whatever that the rest of us in the room can't see. But given those who are